All right, to give you a quick introduction, we're back with another installment, the AJ Bruno Show. This time, we're finally going to video format. People have nagged me to do it, and I'm finally attempting it. So today we're joined by Samaire Armstrong. She's an actress who's appeared in quite a few popular TV shows and movies, and I've also heard she's the president-elect. So good evening, and nice to talk to you.
It's so nice to see you. Thank you for having me.
Sure.
And yes, that's, I guess, how you do it these days. You just sort of announce it, and that's what you are.
Yeah, that's how it seems to work.
Uh-huh.
So we'll get into some politics in a bit. I want to start. I know you spent quite a bit of time growing up in Japan and other parts of Asia. I don't think I'm the first one to originally think you were part Japanese, though. Can you tell us about your
Yeah.
background there, and do people sometimes confuse you for that?
Yeah, when they hear that I was born there and that I spent quite a bit of time there, they assume. I mean, it only kind of makes sense, that I might be Japanese as well, but I'm not. And my parents went there to travel to do research in traditional battlefield sword training. My mom was researching healing aspects and traditions and culture. So that was the world that we sort of coexisted in, this sort of like fighting and healing in Japan for many years. Um, but I am not actually after the Me 23, I think that's what it is. I found out like I have like 0.5% Japanese. So there is that.
So kind of like when Elizabeth Warren said she was
Yeah,
Native American. So,
even worse actually, because it's even less.
uh, so how did you first get interested in acting and then start to break into the industry?
So I always felt it was a calling. It was all I ever wanted to do from a very young age. I Aliens with Sigourney Weaver was my first movie that I had seen, and I was smitten by the strength of the character. And I don't know, maybe I needed attention. I'm not sure. I wanted to act. I wanted to tell stories. I wanted to participate in a narrative, and on a grander scope, I understood that storytelling is how we relay history, but also sort of create future and develop the moral constructs of our society. And that was exciting to me. I wanted to be a part of that. I mean, I used to watch films on the edge of my seat, like what's going to happen next, and like these magical moments would happen. And at the end of the movie, when you walk away from it, you're left with questions and like, how would I have handled that situation? What would I've done instead? Or all these elements that are enriching after you watch the film. And I wanted to participate in creating that for audiences.
Mhm.
So
So one of your first roles was in the X Files, which I've been meaning to watch through one of these days, but there's like 200 episodes.
yeah,
Um,
I did that during COVID.
oh, did you? Yeah, it's
Yeah,
probably worth it. But
yeah.
so what was guest starring on such a highly regarded classic cult show like?
It was amazing because it was also one of the shows that I know my dad had watched, because and our genres didn't necessarily mix growing up, but that was a show that we had watched together. So to audition and be on that, it was my first guest star role, and um, it was really beyond, like, you have these dreams and aspirations of doing something, but when you're there and you're doing it, it blows your mind no matter what.
Mhm. Okay, great. So another show you were on, Freaks and Geeks. It's kind of like that show was like a
Wow.
breeding ground of future successful actors. What
That
did you
yeah,
take up? Yeah.
that's a really, really good way of putting it. Um, that's exactly what it was. It felt like that's what it was actually. I've been quite lucky to be on a number of shows that have felt like relatively significant importance to culture, and that was definitely one of them. The OC was another one, and then also sort of like, well, also the Entourage, but then even like cult classics like The Mentalist, and it's all it's an honor to be on them, really. Um, it's a bizarre experience when you're that young and you're like people all around the world were watching the OC. It was very, very strange because well, I don't know about how old you are, but when I was watching television, it wasn't worldwide, you know. Worldwide we were not watching the same things. But yeah, that was a big turning point.
Yeah. These days you can stream anything, so it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Mhm.
Well, you anticipated some of my next questions. So I first knew who you were from the OC, which
Mhm.
was like my personal teenager show. So that
Yeah.
gives you an idea how old I am.
Yeah.
So this was kind of a breakout role for you. How did you land that and turn a one-off appearance into 15 episodes?
I think I, I was at a point in my career where I had been out there or here in Los Angeles for a number of years and putting in the footwork, hitting the pavement as it were, auditioning. And I was really trying to do it the way that everyone was suggesting I did it. I felt like, they probably knew what was what was the route to take. I was the newbie in this situation, but I found that every time I followed other people's lead and really didn't listen to my own instincts, nothing came through. And so I sort of got to this place where I was like, I'm going to cut my hair, I'm going to dye it blonde, I'm just going to be different than what everyone else is and be more like the punk rock I feel I am and see what happens. And oddly, I think it was both my confidence, but sort of just a difference in what was on the, on the plate, so to speak, of, available actresses. Like, I think I just mixed it up a little bit. And I think I truly believe because I had so much confidence in myself that I was able to portray a character with confidence, especially in like the OC specifically. It was like there was a cookie cutter beauty and characters that were written, in like it's like all American and and the girl next door and the brunette, stunner. And I think that I was able to bring an element to the screen um, that not a lot of people got to have represent them. I when I watched film and TV, like I wanted to see someone who looked like me, like who dressed odd like me, and who had um like quirks, nuances, and so I was, for whatever reason, at that moment in time, they were open to it. And because the show, it took 8 days to film, and then and then it would air. So they edit. So it was like 2 weeks or 2 to 3 weeks lag. It felt, I believe, is what it was. It might have been more than that, maybe 3 weeks. But you'd start to film, and then roughly 3 weeks later, the episode would be on air. And the audience response was why I was able to come back and why I continued to stay for as long as I did, because they responded to Anna. And actually the character was written as, a long brown hair bookworm, whatever that means. And yeah, it was like an exciting. It was, the audition was very, very far away, and I'd been to this location for other projects, and I kept saying, I hate coming down here. Like, it's so far. I never get it. After this audition, this is my last audition down here, and then then I ended up coming down weekly because I had to film there, but it was worth it.
That was funny. One thing I've heard though with that show is people ask for a reunion. Seem every show comes back these days, it seems,
Yeah.
but they insist there's no good story to tell. They don't want to come back. What do you think about that? And what have you heard?
I've heard the people asking for it. I mean, there's always a good story to tell. I haven't heard anybody, producers or anybody, talking about it, or actors, and I haven't come out as in the way that I have in the last few months. I don't think if there was a reunion that I would be invited to be a part of it. But yeah,
Well, these days you never know. Like Roseanne got written off her own show, so
that's what I'm
yeah.
saying. Yes, yeah.
But yeah, no, that would be good to see. So in an Entourage, that was another show I watched. You were on for, I think, 8 episodes. Was there ever any chance you were going to stick around longer there, or was Ari Gold too tough of a boss?
No, that was supposed to be, I think it was like six of the 8 episodes. She was supposed to pop in and out. Ari was a tough boss, but I loved him and I learned so much from him. And it's really bonkers what's happened in Hollywood and how people become villainized for the most ridiculous things. And I had the best experience with him. He taught me a lot. What we would be acting, and if we'd be doing like a on the walk scene, and I would start to fumble and I'd get nervous, and he pulled me aside. He goes, "Hey, if that happens, just keep going with it. Like that's the good stuff, you know." And he was very genuine and wonderful to me. So I'm kind of bummed. You heard about his show getting canceled because of Me Too movement.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that movement is getting it's crazy to say the least.
It is crazy.
Yeah.
It is crazy.
So
it's like a witch hunt.
That's putting it mildly. It's being
yeah
nice to witch hunt. So another role you did, another show I watched, but by the end I kind of wished that maybe I didn't because of the way it ended. Resurrection. So that was your longest TV role. I want to know what the hell was going on because they never explained anything. And I feel like I invested 2 seasons and I got no answers.
I know, so. I did too. I think we all did. The producers always said, we know where this is heading. We know where this is going. We have a trajectory. We know how it's going to end. I question if that was real. I think that they sort of blew the lid too soon by pulling him up from the grave. Do you remember that? I don't know, in the first few episodes. I think they could have just like taken longer and let it the mystery of it live a little. The pace was kind of fast in some places, but also sort of slow in others. I don't know. I was looking for a really good mystery. The pilot was incredible. There were great writers. I hate to say it. It doesn't matter because honestly, I keep going back to this. I have the freedom to say anything because, quite frankly, I don't think that I will be hired again, having come out as a conservative. That being said, I think there were too many cooks in the kitchen in that particular project.
Yeah. Have you asked the writers on there for any answers or try to pry anything or?
They just would say, we know where it's going, but we can't tell you.
I don't think I believe them. I don't think they had any idea what was going on.
Yeah.
But yeah. So with some of your movie roles, the one that stands out to me, for some reason, the critics didn't like it. I enjoyed Just My Luck. I thought it was a good movie.
Oh yeah, what did the critics say about that one?
Rotten Tomato score is not so generous on it. It's on the lower end.
But what did they say? Like it was just terrible?
I guess they thought it was cliched, or they didn't like the story.
It's a romantic comedy. Look, I'll be the first to admit when a project I've been in is kind of bunk, but I thought that was cute. I thought it was great. I know it cost a lot of money to make because there was a lot of editing that was required. But yeah.
Yeah. What sort of editing?
In particular, Lindsay Lohan was in a phase where she really liked to spray tan. And so color matches were not always the same from week to week. Her skin. So they had to color match and color correct quite a bit.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
I do think that Chris Pine seems like a cool guy. Is that the impression you got?
Definitely. Yeah. That was definitely. He's like gone up into this uber exuberant cool that I'm like, is that human? I'm not sure. Like he drives this really cool car and he's got the cool glasses and like he looks like a character from the 60s? No, wait, the 70s? What era do you think that was? Do you know what the vibe he's got now?
Yeah, I'm going to say 70s.
70s. Okay, yeah. Yeah, he was always a real sweetheart, a very, very lovely man. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, he's a big star now. So.
Oh yes, he is for sure.
There were a few music videos you were in, especially that one we remember from American Idol, which has a number of views. What's the story behind those and being involved in one as big as that?
Yeah, that was. I mean, that was just an act of God, I guess. I was happy to be a part of it. It was such a great. I found out way later after American Idol had been on for a while that it was the song that they were using. I had no idea why everyone knew what the song was. But I loved the concept. Daniel Powders was awesome. And I love telling stories in short form. I think that there's a really beautiful way to get a message across in 2 minutes. And you have to be super creative and show just enough not to be like over emoting. I think music videos are beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So I skipped over quite a lot of your acting resume. Is there anything that I didn't mention that you're particularly proud of, TV show, movie wise?
No.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that sums it up.
Yeah, I think, what happened was I had a lot of joy and excitement for the possibilities of storytelling. And as I got older, the storytelling became more limited, and not just because of my age, but also because of what was happening in America.
Yeah.
And I think that people stopped taking risks with content for fear of being canceled, and stopped telling stories that were authentic for fear of being canceled, and became this really unorganic process. And it's a shame, because there's a lot of people who've been silenced, and then there's a lot of people who are just in fear. So they're going down this road of storytelling that's just like, it's lifeless. I mean, you've got the like feel good Lifetime projects and the feel good Hallmark projects, and the really interesting like spy dramas and stuff, but like, where are the real authentic human stories that don't have like some PC liberal driven propaganda in it?
Every show these days has
Yes.
pretty much
Every show. And what makes me so upset? It's like, I'm a big fan of the show Bosch. And that show takes place in Los Angeles. It's about the LAPD. Why, in the midst of defund the police and cutting $100 million from the LAPD funding, why would a show that completely exists because of the LAPD just keep their mouth shut?
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't they say not one thing? Have they said anything? I mean, I've actually gone looking. I'm like, they have to have said something. We support the blue. We back the blue. Back the blue, by the way. How can nobody, all these shows, and not only not do they not say anything, but have been articles and line produce, or not line producers, but what are they called? Showrunners have said like, oh, well, we've been doing a disservice by painting police in too good of a light. That there's this idea that they should vilify them more. And that's the danger. And that's exactly what I meant by, that film and television has a big impact on culture. Like, that's it in a negative way, a pretty negative way. So like, we're getting inundated with our media with that information, and now our what we watch for pleasure is also inundating us with this ridiculous narrative that we're supposed to be at war with basically everyone who doesn't speak in sync with these particular people.
Yeah. One thing that I never got was, so Hollywood is so left leaning. It's supposed to be liberal or progressive, open minded, but if you have different views, they will hound on you. Unless you're already like a huge like A++ star, your career is like sabotaged for speaking up about it. What have people said to you about this? Do you have ones who have different views that respect them, or what's the overall like outcome?
So I've had as soon as I came out, I had a few old agents reach out to me and thank me for speaking out, and that they never would be able to. I then started hearing from different producers here and there who shared the sentiment of being conservative, and I think it's a branding issue that we have right now, right? So progressive, like, we're being tricked into think nobody buys it. Progressive is not progressive. Progressive is very limited, actually. And conservative is actually the opposite. Conservatives, that only applies to government. We just don't want the government. Everybody else can be here illegally. We could all hang out together. It doesn't matter what your sexual preference is. Nobody cares about that stuff anymore. Okay, maybe there's like a small limited group, but I'm not speaking for them, and I don't think anyone else is either. But so the progressives are in so much fear of what they believe that the conservatives are, and because of that, they're creating the same world that of fear is what they're becoming. It's like nobody here is that. They've never been that, guys. Okay, so maybe some super progressive right-wing conservatives at one point, but like the majority of Americans are not extremists, you know? But it seems like more and more the message of the left is becoming extremist, and the actions are becoming extremist as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't even like to use the term liberal or even progressive is the thing they want us to call them. I just say leftist.
Right.
Because that's
Yeah,
what it is.
yeah. That's what my buddy says the same thing. He's like, you shouldn't call them liberal because that's not what they are. You know, and there are actual liberals who don't adhere or feel in sync with what the far left is saying either.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So is this a more recent revelation for you, or were you like secretly a Bush supporter back when the left in Hollywood was after him too?
I love that you remember that. I wasn't a supporter. I was I too young to vote? Oh, yeah, I was too young to vote, but I was here when he
2000?
2000, yeah. Oh wait,
not that I'm counting, but I don't think so.
wait, it was 2000. Yeah, thank you. No, I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Okay, so wait, did I vote? Then I must have voted, but I have no recollection of it.
Yeah.
It must have been a mail-in ballot. I'm pretty sure it was actually from here to Arizona.
I hope it was legal.
What?
I hope it was a legal ballot.
It was legal. It was legal. Yeah, it was. Yeah. So why don't I remember voting? That's really bizarre. Okay, so I remember, and I tell the story all the time, but I was in a yoga class, and I was in a Kundalini yoga class in Studio City, and he had just gotten reelected, and there were people literally in there crying, like bawling, and I was like, this is crazy to me. Like I just moved out from Arizona, and these adults were like so scared, you know, and I thought it was like, this seems irrational, and I was like, well, there must be a reason for it. There must have some logical fundamental thing that they're basing this reaction on, but I don't believe that was true necessarily, and certainly as time went on, it proved not to be true. I always felt out of step with Hollywood, but I wasn't quite sure why. I hadn't really formed a strong political opinion or perspective. I definitely felt like there was some hysteria in Hollywood, and intuitively, when Obama came around, and I just, something felt off. It did. I felt like he was a car salesman. I felt like, you know, I understood on the one hand, like, wow, this is really great for the country to have a black president. Like, this is going to mean a lot. But I think I just I didn't understand identity politics at that time, but that is what I've now come to understand, that that's what that was about. You know, it was like he looked the part, he looked presidential, whatever that means. He spoke presidential, whatever that means, and he didn't do anything. He didn't get anything done, which traditionally in my life was pretty much how it had been going. You know what I mean? Like, war.
Hope and change not count?
Yeah, hope and change sounds nice, but do you know what I mean? Like, I think that and that was the big thing when I saw hope in my head. I was like, nope. You know, I just felt like hope is such a last resort. You know, it's not a really. Oh, I hope it works out. You know, like, oh, I hope it works out. You know, it's like you can't say hope with conviction. Like, you can say like, we're gonna make it, or he did end up saying yes we can or something like that. So there is that, but yeah. So so I didn't vote for him. Hillary came around, and I was like, holy, you know, there's this lady's pure evil. But Trump was there, and I was like, yikes, this is a reality television, you know, personality who's been in like the hip hop world forever. Like, you know, Trump Towers, is this like, but in contrast to Hillary, anything was good, you know? And so I took that leap of faith, especially when he started speaking about draining the swamp. And if that doesn't perk up your ears, I don't know what will, because that's the thing intuitively throughout the years that, you know, you're like, oh, that sucks. Like, I can't even look at that stuff. It's so creepy and cringy and disgusting and like pure evil, what's going on in politics. Like, it's so unrelatable, untangible, and so apart from Americans, but then the way Trump spoke, and he was fallible, and he said the wrong things sometimes. He said the right things in the wrong way sometimes. And I was excited that we weren't hearing that really smooth talking political car salesman again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. As much as they hated Bush, I'm surprised they didn't keel over from him, because it must have been a million times worse to watch that.
Wait, as much as they hated Bush,
I'm surprised they didn't keel over from Trump, because I would think it'd be a million times worse.
They being who?
The liberal Hollywood elite, that leftist Hollywood.
What do you mean? That's exactly what happened. They keeled over.
But they're still around. I thought they would have dropped dead from.
Yeah, they pretty much have. It's The Walking Dead out here. Yeah,
pretty much. So you mentioned identity politics. That's something that bothers me a lot. One thing I remember, the Academy changed its rules recently. I'm sure you heard about it. Yeah, so that in a few years, it's going to be impossible for any normal movie to get nominated. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
It's storytelling is over. If you have parameters in which your story is allowed to be told, it's not your story anymore. It's someone else's, right? And so if you're only telling stories that someone else is satisfied with, then you're funneling out all the rest of the world and existence and ideas and perceptions, and you're getting one note. It's like playing a song with two keys. These are the keys you're allowed to play. That's it. Sure, you can be super creative with that, but why? Why are we doing that? For who?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. And all these studio bosses, I'm sure there's not many liberals among them, but I don't know.
I know a few. I know, and a lot of these people, they don't care one way or the other. They just want to make the money. So they're going the most safe and sound, bankable route. But there are people who are really conflicted by it and are sick of it, are sick of the identity politics, are sick of the racism training in, in human resources that they have to sit through. There's a lot of people who don't buy into it and are being forced to, but run the risk of not being employed if they stand up to it. But then that being said, the way the industry's been working, people are making less and less money, and especially now with COVID, they're at the point where it's like, it's not worth it to bite my tongue anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hence what you did. So
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, acting was always one of my passions too, but I'm very outspoken politically.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, so I felt like this would not work in today's world. Do you feel like someone like that just wouldn't fit in? Yeah.
Well, I mean, and that's what I hope. I hope that, when I came out speaking, I was like, okay, I'm willing. What I'm very likely doing is putting it all on the line. I'm basically saying goodbye to my career, any potential future jobs, it's gone by doing this. And that was, that it was that important to me, that my entire life stream was like, okay, you have to say something. I kept looking around, waiting for other people to speak up. Finally, Matthew McConaughey kind of has that, which is awesome. And that's a start, But at the time, it was me, James Wood, Christy Alley, Scott Baio. What's kind of an odd bunch. But it doesn't need to be so extreme, right? I'm not trying to force anyone's mind. I just want to say, hey, we all have perceptions of reality that we can still work together, and we could still tell stories with one another. You guys liked me until you found out that I voted for Trump. Doesn't that make you kind of weird, not me? You know what I mean? Now, nothing's changed on my end,
Exactly. Yeah. Although there are there's this growing industry of conservative and Christian films. So what about that? Do you think?
Yeah, so I think that's the other extreme, and that's great. That's great that that's an avenue for people to be able to tap into and watch that sort of thing. But that's in a way another echo chamber, and I'm glad it exists, because you need the contrast to the left, but you also just need storytelling, which it doesn't have to be driven conservative or driven Christian or driven liberal. Just well, can't we exist together again? Isn't that a thing that is possible? I know it is.
That's the way it used to be. Not
It
anymore.
used to be. And the other thing that used to be is like we used to not talk politics. We used to not tell anyone who we voted for, That wasn't a thing.
It used to be impolite. Like you don't talk about politics, money,
Yes,
religion. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And now it's like you've got the talking head conservatives, me and you and whoever else on
Mhm.
our side, that are like and but then you have majority is the like in Hollywood is like you're talking about Joe Biden, you're talking about Hillary, you're talking about Obama, and if you're not, you're conservative. you know?
I don't understand why some of them like Kamala so much, and I feel like people forgot, like during the debates. One, she basically called Biden a racist, and
Yeah,
two, she's talking
yeah,
about spending trillions of dollars on reparations, which is insane.
yeah.
But that she's a moderate somehow, I don't understand
Yeah.
that.
No,
Yeah,
none of it makes sense. Their
yeah.
healthcare plan doesn't make sense. The save the world, climate change doesn't make sense. But nobody cares about it. Nobody on the left cares about it making sense. They care about feeling good. And I
Mhm.
think that has to do with a lot of personal responsibility for one's human experience, right? That fits into progressiveness and liberalism. It's like, I need you to say something or not say something because it offends me or makes me feel bad. So you need to change for me to feel good. And so these politicians on the left come up and they say these things and they feel good when it doesn't matter that, they don't that it's actually quite evil what they're saying, or that it's probably going to tank the economy, or that millions of people are going to lose their lives and their jobs because it's pretty much communism. That doesn't matter. They feel good hearing it, and then they'll be able to blame it on someone else when the hits the fan.
Yeah, yeah, that's the way it is. So I'm curious, do you consider yourself conservative on every issue, or do you kind of differ on anything?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what, in my mind, like I want small government,
Hmm.
little regulations, like get the government out of our everyday experience
Yeah.
and let them handle the big stuff, the big United States against another country stuff. I don't want them in my life, and I don't think that they should be involved. They're not good decision makers and they don't reflect Americans for the most part. Like overall they're just being bankrolled by lobbyists to put forth an agenda that suits the corporation's need. Like I don't need that whole thing in my life. So
Yeah.
that's my biggest thing, in terms of, I don't know what, like where I stand on abortion. I'm pro-choice to a certain extent, like that sort of thing. But I'm even that I'm having an awakening of sorts, and I'm reflecting on what that means, and especially how it goes in sync with my faith and what that means. So that's an evolving. I don't have a hard line. I know, yeah, whatever. Okay, so there's that, But then, like with marriage, are we talking about like gay marriage? Like how? Yeah, of course they should be able to be. I think like what's the
Hmm.
big deal? But I don't have anything to. I don't. There's no dog in the fight for that for me. Like shouldn't
So
and
maybe more libertarian on those social issues.
maybe
So,
yes,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah.
Interesting.
I guess I don't like the idea of I want to remain um uh, not anonymous, but I want the anonymity of not having to take on an entire group's identity to define me.
Hmm.
Because there's so many people with so many different perceptions. Like, why would I put myself, into a box?
Yeah.
And I think people are evolving. People are their understandings of things evolve daily.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Can
So
I
do you
tell you?
think?
Sorry,
Go ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Can I tell you what I'm really bummed about?
Yeah.
I'm super bummed that for the last 4 years I was in silence while Trump was in office,
Mm.
because I didn't pay as much attention. Like I paid attention, but not nearly as much attention as I have in the last 4 months. And I feel like I did myself such a disservice because I was in fear of being caught, right? That I had voted for him in Hollywood. And I think there were so many things he did that were so glorious, and there were so many moments that I could have just soaked up had I not been in so much fear. And that's no one else's responsibility but my own. And I
Yeah.
guess that's part of like my coming out is like taking ownership of that, because I could sit here and be like, well, the left told me that I couldn't have a job if I didn't do it. You know what I mean? But that's BS. That was my own doing that I did to myself.
Yeah. So, did you come from like a political background at all? Like, does your family lean one way or the other?
My father's leans more Republican because he's big on
Mhm.
no less government involved in your life as well.
Yeah.
And my mom's independent. Is like, I've never actually heard my dad say he's Republican, so maybe I don't know. It wasn't a big topic of discussion ever.
So they didn't force their beliefs on you like certain people do? Yeah.
Oh yeah, no. They were big on developing independent thinking, and actually, when BLM came out this year
Mhm.
again, I was like, I dove into it at first, and I was like, this is important, the Black people, you know what I mean?
That whole movement, like it was, I mean, it's the people are so tied with Marxists. They've defended Castro and
Yes,
stuff,
yes,
and yet people throw money at them.
I
Like,
know.
it
I
doesn't make
know, I
sense.
know, I know. That was the one thing I never donated to them because, again, my fear of big organizations. I was like, where is this going? So I instead like bought from black owned businesses, or bought or donated money to the street in Minnesota that got burned down, or Minneapolis that got burned down. Do you know what I'm talking about during the riots?
I can't
Yeah,
think of
you
the name.
do. You do. You know what I
I
mean?
know vaguely what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I'd put my money there, but but as I researched more, I was like, this is so insulting to Black people to operate under this assumption like that they're not capable of taking care of themselves. There's this idea from the liberal world, which I was existing in, which is like, they're at a disadvantage and they're not capable, that because white privilege and all this stuff. And it was like, that's the like most disgusting racist shit that I've ever heard. Like, what do you mean they're not capable? Don't they have, like, aren't they human? Aren't they Americans? And I think there's this sort of victim mentality that is nurtured and coaxed into existing that people really champion for. And it's the exact opposite of what we should be doing for our society. It's like, you're capable of absolutely anything. That's what America's about. And sure, you might have someone saying, no, I don't like what you're doing, I don't like you because you're this or that, but you have the ability to rise above in a most beautiful, tremendous way and prove that person wrong on a various ways and in capabilities. And that I don't believe that anyone should be limited by someone else's understanding of them
Mhm.
or misunderstanding of them. Like, your worth shouldn't be because that person doesn't think you should have the job, which I also don't think really exists as much as we're being it peddled to say we are. Am I as fuzzy as your face is right now, or is that
Am
just
I
someone?
fuzzy?
Yeah.
Doesn't look like it to me. That's not good. Hopefully, just
Okay.
connection.
It's a
Uh,
like digital fuzz.
well, I'd like to avoid these technical issues. Hopefully, it looks okay to me, but
Okay, okay,
yeah, same.
okay.
Um, but no, I don't understand that. Especially because one, political faction has not really done anything for them over all these decades.
Yes.
It wouldn't make sense to keep supporting them.
Ah,
Yeah,
oh my God, it just
yeah.
makes you want to pull your hair out. Like, the guy who created the crime bill that we're talking about, if there is systemic racism and that we're pointing to, is actually written by the guy you're championing for to get into office. How does this make sense? And then you have Kamala Harris, who's put innocent people in jail, kept them in bars, behind bars longer, held evidence. I mean, these are not historically good people for Black and minority communities.
Mhm.
Why now is it going to be any different? And at a certain point, you just have to be like, you have to put your hands up. Nobody's listening. Nobody's looking at reality and being like, hey, this is odd. Like, well, no, but they are. They're looking at reality and saying, yeah, that's bad, but they won't do it this time. Like, what are we teaching society? That's the logical next thought. The logical next thought is, they've messed up for 47 years. What makes us think that the 48th year is going to be in better? What makes them think that we're stupid enough to believe that?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a logical argument, but for some reason it doesn't work.
Logic.
I think so.
I said, you know how the left says that the left says that gender is a social construct. So my new thing is that to the left, logic is a social construct.
Which they can ignore whenever they want.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
In the name of science.
and then
Yeah.
yeah, that. um, so in LA and California, it seems like these used to be, especially California, used to be redder or even more competitive, and that state is it's completely gone. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Is it a place you want to stay despite that?
No, no,
Yeah.
no, no. I'm definitely leaving. With the new DA we have here, they're releasing inmates by the thousands, I think effective like tomorrow night.
Mhm.
And they're cutting the cost, or they're cutting the police funding. They've already cut it, but I think it was 150. It was either 100 million or 150 million, and they're doing another 50 million. They're getting rid of jobs and opportunities out here. I mean, it it's like a bad Batman movie. What's happening here? There's just like let the criminals out, and then how are we supposed to defend ourselves? We don't even have police officers anymore. Are we allowed to have our weapons to protect ourselves? No, not even that. It's just you got to get out of this place. I don't know. I mean, it's going to take some. There's Major Williams, he's going to be running for governor. There's an recall Newsom process, Governor Newsom, that we're trying to get him out of here. But with this DA, I don't know. I don't know. It's going to take some really strong-willed people to fight back against these maniacs who I don't know. Are they maniacal? Are they evil? Are they dumb? I can't tell because we're still in lockdown based on no science. They're shut down outdoor dining based on no science. Yet we all go to Walmart and hang out and go grocery shopping in aisles that are closer than we would have to sit if we were sitting outside eating.
Yeah. That makes no sense. I mean, they recalled Gray Davis, so I don't see why they can't recall Gavin Newsom for
That's true.
stuff.
That is true. Yeah. And I think the more stringent he gets with these ridiculous lockdowns, Mayor Garcetti came on the other day and he said, uh, cancel everything, cancel all your plans, don't meet with anyone, don't go walking with anyone, don't travel if you don't have to. And then it was like I walked outside, I was like, so what's canceled? And nothing was canceled. It was just an act. I think he just said it because I don't know how you're supposed to get to a location without walking, but all the locations were open. I don't know how you're supposed to get your hair done, which you can still do, and your nails done, which you can still do, and everything else other than eat outside. But you have to drive to get there. So no, and the police for the majority of the part. I mean, I do believe the chief in Los Angeles is trying to make the police officers enforce the curfew.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody wants to do that. They don't want to be they don't want to become enemies of citizens who are having their rights taken away left and right. It's a historically really scary time. I mean, this will go down in the history books with a giant red dot over it. Like, what just happened here?
It's gone too far in so many ways. Even in your old homeland of the OC, the sheriff there is complaining about it too. So
so that's good. Unfortunately, sheriffs can be replaced, and I wonder how long that these brave men and women will actually have an opportunity to speak out against what's going on before someone else is like, no, we're going to find someone who will say what we want. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And the worst part, though, is the hypocrisy. Like a few weeks ago, he was spotted dining, and there was like too many people. But that, he was sorry he got caught. That's what he was sorry about.
If he was in so much fear, if it was as bad as they say it is, they wouldn't have run the risk for themselves and their own lives to get caught. It's not even about like hiding better. They would have been scared to do it. There's nothing out there to be. We take care of ourselves, we isolate and we protect the vulnerable, and we go on with our life like we always have. And these politicians are proving that is what they do.
It's crazy. So if not California, where are you thinking in terms of a free place?
I'm thinking Arizona, even though it pretend turned blue. I don't buy it. Yeah, I don't.
If it either went blue, who knows if either one?
Yeah.
it might have not really went that way.
I would love to be in a place that didn't try to take all of my money in taxes and that stayed out of my business and had less rules and regulations, that I could have a business that thrives and just exist. That's America, is freedom. We need that freedom back. And it can't feel like there's this all watching eye over us all the time. Where do you live? New York?
New Jersey. Well, I've worked in New York, not recently, but yeah. So we don't have the outdoor dining here, but then again, it's freezing now. For you can have it because it's warm.
Right. They closed it down right before Thanksgiving with no scientific evidence to back up or support why they were doing that. I mean, and the restaurants spent so much money on creating these outdoor dining spaces, hundreds of thousands of dollars for each restaurant. Like, they're just screwed. Yeah.
And I saw an article the other day. There was a outdoor dining restaurant closed, and right next door there was a movie that had so it made no sense, but he has to cater to his friends, I guess. So
it's disgusting. When he put on an announcement that that the entertainment industry is an essential business. It's essential to their propaganda, is what it is.
Yeah. It's crazy. So since there's going to be a lockdown of the state for the next through Christmas, what's your plan to ride that out?
Are we in a lockdown right now? Is that what's happening?
I don't know if it started yet, did it?
Oh, okay. So there's it's so confusing what's happening.
Who knows?
I mean, it really is. My plan to ride it out, I'm just going to carry on with my life, business as usual. I mean, what are they going to do?
Break down your door? I don't know.
I don't think I haven't heard of anyone going after anyone yet, And I think that the resistance, the freedom rallies are in full force. They're not going to take it. Nobody's going to take it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The biggest monumental moment will be the businesses that refuse to shut down, and that's a scary place to be. I'm not there, so I can't speak to that. I don't have a restaurant that I'm like, no, I'm not gonna. I'm gonna stay open and serve people. That's a scary, daunting place to be. I can imagine, but that's gonna be the real shift when people are like, back off. Where's the science? And actually, Beverly Hills recently came out saying we're not going to accept the health commissioners. Is that the word? Health commissioner? I'm not sure. Health county director, something or another, to tell us to shut down our restaurants without any evidence. And if you're going to make any mandated restrictions, you need to provide data to prove as to why. And it needs to be specific to areas, not just a mass, okay, you're all shut down. It needs to be localized and make sense.
Yeah. I mean, that's the problem having a governor like that. Even when he was mayor of San Francisco, I remember knowing who he was then. And the fact that he's reached the level that he has, I never liked the guy, and I don't understand what anyone does. So
yeah, no, I don't think many do. I think the ones that do are in on it. Yeah.
So I don't know. Well, with that, are there any closing words of wisdom you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I just hope that people, and I'm sure they do if they're listening to you, remember the fundamentals of what America is, and we get knocked down and we get back up, and fundamentally, as Americans, we have the right to freedom, but that right needs to be fought for, to be kept, and it needs to be used to be kept. So if we, it's like a muscle. If we don't strengthen that, then it becomes weak. And I think that's what's happened. I think a lot of us have become weak, in just expecting that things are going to go away, because that's naturally how it's been. We have to exercise and practice our rights.
No, that I agree with, and hopefully people do.
Yeah.
So thanks again for being on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.